Hey guys, got something a little bit different for you this week. Instead of standing in front of a green screen, I'm standing here in my workshop. So a lot of you guys have been asking, what kind of tools do you need or should you have if you want to get into guitar kit building? So here I am. This is not a pro video. This is more of a bro video. This is just for my Guns and Guitars community. I'm going to walk you through the basic tools that you're going to need just to assemble your kit, and then the tools you're going to need to make it a more high-end playing kit, and then tools that you're going to need if you really want to get into some high-end like modding and stuff like I typically end up doing to my guitars. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you guys some tools that you're not going to need. Now, these are tools that you've probably seen me use on my channel before, but they may not have been such a great investment, or there might be better tools for the job. So I'm going to let you guys know that too. So I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars. Let's get started. Okay, let's go ahead and start off with the basic tools that you're gonna need just to assemble your guitar kit. So this is for those of you guys that may not have any tools at all and you've been tinkering with the idea of purchasing a kit and you don't know what you're gonna need just to get the thing put together. The first tool you're gonna need, and it's probably the most important tool, is coffee. Don't skip the coffee. Firstly, you're gonna need a couple of screwdrivers, a flathead and a Phillips head. Those are basic tools that if you don't have those, you probably aren't even considering building a kit. You also need a set of Allen wrenches. Most kits actually come with the Allen wrenches that you'll need to assemble it because it's kind of considered a specialty tool. But in my experience, especially if you're buying like the cheaper kits from eBay or Amazon, sometimes they forget to put those in. So make sure you have a set or you have a friend with a set that you can borrow just for the basic assembly and setup of your guitar kit. You also may end up needing a drill. Now, it doesn't have to be a nice cordless drill like this. You can get a basic corded drill really cheap at your hardware store, or really good place to find power tools is actually garage sales, or even better, estate sales. You know, some old guy died and he had a lot of tools and his kids don't know how to use them, so they sell them for really cheap. So keep your eyes out there. You can find really good deals on power tools, but you probably will want a drill. You'll need some drill bits to go with it. Now again, if you're buying one of those cheaper kits off of eBay or from TomTop or something, you may not have a hole drilled for your bridge ground connect wire, and that's a very important wire to have. So you're gonna wanna pick up some of these really long drill bits. So you can see them right here, see how long they are, but it's really long. So, you know, when you're drilling, you can go in a really shallow angle and then you won't have any issues bottoming out your drill or anything. So you'll need a longer drill bit. I'll put a link in the description to a long drill bit that you can use. I got this one for like $7 or $8 at Lowe's, and then I found out later at Harbor Freight you can actually get a set of 3 of them for about the same price. You're also going to need a hammer or a mallet because if you're building a bass kit with like precision style tuners, you'll need to hammer down those ferrules. I don't know, I have no idea how you pronounce that, but the little kind of grommets that go in there, you need to hammer those down. Also, if you're building a guitar with like a tune-o-matic style bridge, you're gonna need to set your posts. And if you don't have a wooden or plastic mallet, I've found a good trick is if you just get a piece of scrap wood, then you can just set that on top of what you're hammering down, hammer it down. It's the same thing as using a mallet. So now if you bought a kit that has a set neck or a glue-in neck, then you're gonna need some good wood glue. And I'm gonna tell you right now, Titebond is the only wood glue that you should be using to glue down a guitar neck. It is really strong stuff. The original Titebond is great. Titebond 2 is also great. You don't need Titebond 3. So the original or Titebond 2 is perfect. But when this stuff sets, it's actually stronger than the wood. So you'll glue down your neck, and when it sets, you have a bigger possibility of breaking your neck or breaking your guitar body before you actually break the bond that you get from Titebond wood glue. So not affiliated with Titebond, but just having some experience as a do-it-yourselfer and woodworker, I know this stuff is the best and the strongest and the easiest to work with. So you can search around on online forums and everyone will tell you if you're gluing a guitar neck, you need Titebond. It's the only glue you should use. Now you may want to also pick up some wood filler if you don't already have some. But this is something you can get after your kit arrives if you find that it has some extra cracks or grooves or, you know, machine marks or whatever that you need to fill in. This is good stuff. Now, as far as finishing the guitar neck, a lot of people make a mistake and use a polyurethane or a lacquer on the fretboard. But you actually don't want to do that because it does kind of jack with your tone a little bit. So kind of the undisputed fact on the internet, the best way to finish a fretboard is with some sort of tung oil finish. So I highly recommend Formby's tung oil finish. I've had really excellent results on fretboards. Those of you that know me know that I use this stuff actually on the entire guitar, but for the fretboard, I highly recommend this stuff. Again, not affiliated with Formby's. I've just had really good results with their products, so that's the brand that I stick with. Again, I'm going to be putting links in the description for all this stuff to buy, mostly on Amazon. I'm a big fan of Amazon. They have the best prices and super fast shipping. And full disclosure, they are affiliate links. So if you make a purchase from those links, Amazon will pay me a referral commission, which is an excellent way for you to support my channel if you like what I'm doing here. The prices aren't any different than if you were to go to Amazon and search these products out yourself. But if you use my link, then I get to earn a commission on it. So you don't pay any more, but it helps me keep the lights on in my workshop. So I appreciate that. Also keep in mind that I've done all the research for you. I found the stuff that has the best reviews, the best price, and I've tried it out and used it. And this is all the stuff that works really good. So because I did all that effort, maybe I deserve a little bit of commission. I don't know. Up to you guys. What am I saying? I'm retarded. I suck at this. What you guys don't know is that I'm actually really bad on camera, especially if I don't have a script. I just ramble and ramble and ramble, so it's terrible. Sorry. This is an unscripted, more candid style video, so I'm sorry for anything that I say or for how it's gonna be like a 25-minute video. I'm sorry. Burn, titebond, sandpaper. Sandpaper is something that you actually want to spend some money on, I've found out. These kits do come from the factory really rough, so you will need to finish sand it before you finish it. You will have to sand out machine marks and tool marks and whatever else, in addition to just scratches and dents from them not being handled super well. Man, I hate sanding. It is my least favorite thing to do in the whole world. I hate it, hate it, hate it. So if you're like me, you hate sanding, invest in some good sandpaper. That cheap Harbor Freight or Walmart brand stuff is just trash. It tears up really easy. The sand falls off of it really easy. You end up going through 5 or 6 sheets just to finish one guitar, and it's the most frustrating experience ever. So that being said, because I hate sanding so much, I'm always on the lookout for the best sanding products because I just want to be done with it now. I don't want to have to deal with it any longer than I have to. What you don't need is a power sander of some kind. I've actually not had excellent results power sanding unless I'm trying to get out some really, really deep tool marks or machine marks. I've actually found that hand sanding for guitar bodies and guitar necks is actually a much better process. As much as it sucks, as much as it makes your arms sore, power sanders aren't necessarily the way to go. So that being said, here is the brand of sandpaper that I use that I've found works really well. It is made by 3M and it's called Sandblaster Pro, and it is their more expensive line of sandpaper, but trust me, spend a little bit more money and get this stuff because a little 4x6 square about that big will last sanding down an entire guitar body. It lasts longer, it's more productive, it doesn't tear nearly as easily because I don't always try to sand out every single scratch and blemish because I'm making more like relic style guitars. I find that if I just start with like 150 or 180 and then once I'm done kind of step up to 220, that's good. And then I also have 320 grit that I use just on the back of a guitar neck to make sure it's nice and smooth so that it plays really easy. Yeah, sand to 220 on the body, sand to 320 just on the back of the neck, 220 on the headstock and everything else, and you're good to go there. Also, a product that I just recently came across that is super helpful are these sanding sponges. And again, these are made by 3M and they are the Sandblaster Pro brand, grade, level, whatever you want to call it. They're a little bit more expensive, but they are awesome because they flex as you're sanding. So it actually, you can use it to kind of match the contours of the body a little bit better, get into some of those hard to reach areas a little bit better. I know obviously paper is flexible, but these seem to do a better job of kind of evenly distributing the pressure while you're sanding. I only have them actually in 220. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna buy them in 150 and 320 as well because I like them that much. So the last tool that you probably don't have if this is your first time considering building a guitar kit is a soldering iron. Now, a lot of these kits do come pre-wired, but oftentimes the bridge ground connect wire is not soldered. So you will have to at least solder that one little piece. But also more often than not, I've actually found that the pre-wired kits that come, oftentimes they're not wired correctly. So you're gonna have to rewire it anyway. So you're definitely gonna need a good soldering iron. Not even a good one. I'm gonna show you a cheapo budget one. It's the one that I use, and it works awesome. It works way better than like, I've had some like Weller, like soldering gun style stuff in the past that are just like way overkill for this kind of soldering. So I'm gonna show you a cheap one that I got on Amazon. I think it was less than 20 bucks, I don't remember. Again, I'll put a link in the description for you. It's got a little temperature gauge on it, which is awesome because then you can just heat it to a certain temperature, which is really important with guitar electronics, because guitar electronics, you can actually burn them out if you apply too much heat or for too long. So having a thermostat on there is super helpful, so that you don't overheat your pots and capacitors and switches and things that could easily burn out. It actually comes in a whole kit that comes with like a little stand so you can set it down without like burning stuff. It comes with solder, and the solder that comes with the kit is actually really good solder. Let's talk about solder a little bit. And I know I'm probably mispronouncing the word solder, but that's the way I grew up saying it, so that's the way I'm gonna say it. So let me know in the comments how it's supposed to be pronounced, as you guys always do. I know that you guys are super helpful. So solder. For guitar electronics, you're gonna want a rosin core 6040 tin lead solder. At least 6040. 6337 is actually even better. The reason why you want the 6040 or the 6337 is because it has a really low melting point. Again, like I mentioned, you don't want to overheat your electronics. And I'll go into more specific details in another video that is specific to wiring guitar electronics and teach you some techniques and stuff that you can use for that. But just know that if you're ordering solder for your first kit build, get 6040 or spend a little bit more, get 6337 tin lead rosin core solder. As far as the diameter of it, something like 0.8 millimeters to 1.6 millimeters is perfect. You don't want to go much bigger than that, and you don't want to go much smaller than that. So something that also comes in the kit are different size soldering tips for your soldering iron. So really useful to have different size tips depending on what component you're soldering. I'll get more into detail on that when I do the soldering tutorial video. Lastly, something that comes with the kit that is super duper useful is this solder sucker. So what it is it's kind of like a little mini vacuum, so to speak. So like if you soldered something and you're like, oh crap, I wasn't supposed to solder that there. Or if your electronics were pre-wired and you have to redo it. This is great for removing solder. So you just heat it up with your soldering iron, and then you press this button and it sucks the solder straight out. And then you just empty it out by dumping it over there. And then you can pull your wire out without any issues. So super useful tool, especially if you're a novice at soldering. You're gonna make mistakes. This is great at helping you fix those mistakes without burning out your pots and switches and stuff because you've held the soldering iron on for too long. That's one of the main reasons why I recommend this kit, is because it really does come with just about everything that you need. You know, it comes with solder, it comes with the soldering tips. The soldering iron is awesome with that thermostat, and the solder sucker is great. Those are the tools that you are going to need to assemble your kit. If you don't have these tools, you can borrow them from friends. You can pick them up at garage sales or estate sales for really cheap. Or you can buy them through my affiliate links there in the description. So now once you've got your kit all assembled, you may find that it doesn't play as good as you want it to. It definitely doesn't play like a high-end factory guitar. Here are some tools you're gonna need to improve your kit so that it can play like a higher-end instrument. And most of these tools are just gonna be dedicated to your neck and fretboard. And that's probably the one thing that sets apart cheaper instruments from higher end instruments, is just how much time the luthier or guitar builder or whatever spent on these particular steps, just leveling, crowning, and polishing frets. So I'm gonna show you a few tools real quick that I use. Now, a few of these tools actually made myself, and I have a video on how to make your own pro luthier tools, so check out that video. I'm not gonna go in depth on how to make them or how to use them because that video tells you all of that stuff. Here I have a notch straight edge. That's what you would use to make sure your neck is perfectly level before you start working on it. The notches are cut out so that it sits flat on your fretboard without touching the frets. As you can see, I've got a few different, I've used this 1 meter stick to make a few different kinds. I got Fender guitar, Fender bass, Gretsch guitar. You can get a lot of use out of just one of these. Check out that video if you want to see how to make it. You're also going to need a sanding beam, and this is just some sort of precision tool that you can use to sand down your frets level once you have your neck completely straight. And I made one out of a level, and it actually works really good. The only problem is that my level is just a little bit too small to do bass necks. So it works great for guitar necks. So I actually invested in this. Since I'm doing this more often now, I thought it was important to have a little bit higher quality one, at least one that's longer so I can do bass necks a little bit better. I bought it on Amazon, again, link in the description, and it comes pretty much perfectly flat. I did lay it down on a glass table with some sandpaper and just completely made sure that it was completely flat. Same as making it with the level, just some double-sided sticky tape and some Sandblaster Pro 3M sandpaper. Actually, I think my double-sided sticky tape is made by 3M. I should have a 3M endorsement. 3M, if you guys are watching this, I'm sending you guys a ton of business. I think you owe me some free kit. Because yeah, so far, sandpaper, double-sided sticky tape, wood filler, so far everything's been 3M brand. So that's not because I'm affiliated with them, it's just because it's what I use and it works well. Again, 3M, if you're watching, send me some stuff. So you're gonna need some files. As you can see, I have them all hung up on that magnetic strip right there. You don't need quite an exhaustive set like I have because I use these for lots of different projects, not just guitars. But just your basic files, just a really small thin one. You can even use a nail file if your wife has one or if you have one. It works good for crowning frets. A triangle file works great for crowning frets. And then just a basic wood file like this is great. Actually filing your nut piece. So that's another thing that's gonna set apart your cheap kit from these higher end factory guitars is that the nut is properly set up. So you don't need a set of nut files. I found with these kits, the plastic nuts that come with them, they are just injected molded plastic. So the slots are cut properly and they do have a pretty good radius. What's wrong with them typically is that they're just not the correct size for your fretboard. They make just one generic size and they slap them in all these kits. So what you're gonna need to do is file down the base of it or file down the slot in your neck so that it can sit a little bit deeper. Filing your nut slots for your strings is a thing that probably requires a whole playlist of videos to describe how to do it properly. And it's actually something that I just avoid. I've done it with mediocre results, good enough, but certainly not better, I think, than just buying them pre-slotted. So if you're gonna upgrade your nut, buy a pre-slotted one is my recommendation. Otherwise, if you're gonna use the plastic one, just make sure you have a file on hand. You can sand down the base of it, or again, just that slot for the neck thing. Can sit a little bit deeper, get that string height perfect. You're also gonna need some additional grits of sandpaper and steel wool. So like this is like 800 grit, like auto body sandpaper. It's made by 3M, imagine that. So depending on how polished you want your frets, I typically just start with 320 grit, step it up to 600 or 800 grit, and then maybe if I'm really feeling motivated, I might do like 1,000 or 1,500 grit before I do. My door just flung open. Believe it or not, there's actually a snowstorm going on outside my shed right now, and I'm like freezing my butt off. I've got like a little space heater down here that you don't see, so that's why the door flew open. Winter storm. I know I live in Arizona, but I live in northern Arizona where we do get snowstorms from time to time. What was I talking about? Sandpaper. Some different grits, higher grits for really polishing. Once you've crowned your frets, really polish them down smooth to like a mirror-like finish. That's gonna make it so that your pitch bends and stuff are really smooth, and it will make it just so your playability is just, you know, just feels like a high-end instrument. So you're gonna want, I would recommend 600 grit or 800 grit, and then 1,000 or 1,500 grit. And then for the last step, I use steel wool. This is probably made by 3M. Oh no, it's not. Rhodes American steel wool is what this is. I just bought it at Walmart. Steel wool is steel wool. You can buy the cheapest crap you find. And it'll totally be fine. Anyway, a lot of people get on my case over using steel wool because it can really jack up your electronics because your pickups, as you know, are magnetized, and steel wool is made of steel, and it leaves just nasty little metal shavings kind of everywhere. So now a lot of people say that instead of using steel wool, you can use a Scotch pad, or you can use just a cloth with like some chrome polish or something. I've not had nearly as good results with those as I do with steel wool. So I stick with steel wool. And the biggest tip that I can give you is that I usually actually just take whatever I'm using the steel wool on, whether it's the frets or if I'm between finishes of like an oil finish like tung oil, if I'm rubbing it with steel wool, I'll just take it out of my shop. I'll do it out there so all the metal filings and stuff fall on the ground out there. Then it's not in my shop and I don't have to deal with it. Also, there's some other tricks. You can use masking tape or whatever to kind of pull it off if it does get on your electronics, or you can just cover your electronics with masking tape so it doesn't get on it in the first place. You can also use a stronger magnet, which I sometimes use a magnet to pick up like if anything falls into like one of these hollow body guitars and I can't get it out with a vacuum, I'll just stick a magnet tied to a string down there and it'll pull it all out. So just some quick tips for that. This is the longest video in the world. I'm sorry, I told you without a script, I just ramble. That you also need either a fretboard guard, or I've just been using masking tape lately. I just found that masking tape works better for masking off the fretboard so that you don't damage it while you are cramming and polishing your frets. This is, imagine that, 3M brand, safe release. This stuff is awesome. You can use the cheaper masking tape and stuff, but it tears and it's a little bit icky. This stuff is actually not made out of paper like typical masking tape. It's more of a plasticky, so it's a little bit more heavy duty, so you don't file through it as easy. You can leave it on for weeks on end and you don't have any trouble pulling it up. So I do think it's worth spending a little bit more on. I wouldn't use it for painting, because the stuff is expensive, but for your guitar fretboards, it's worth having a roll. It lasts a long time. So 3M Platinum safe release masking tape. That's it for improving. Like I said, all those tools are mainly just for doctoring up your fretboard, craning and polishing your frets, and setting up your nut piece. So just make sure you have those tools, or again, you've got some friends that have those tools, you can borrow them for this. Or if you're like me and guitar building is becoming a very addictive hobby, just invest in these tools. Again, affiliate links in the description. Okay, now we're gonna talk about guitar kit and modding. Now, this is for those of you guys that wanna take your kit to the next level. You really want a custom, one-of-a-kind, gosh darn it, my door flew open again. Okay, I think I locked it better. My lock, of course, is on the outside of my shed because I wanna lock up all my tools and all my guitars that I'm building, but yeah, there's nothing to keep the doors closed when I'm in my shed, which would be nice on a blustery, wintry day like today. Where was I? Okay, so these are the tools that you want if you're gonna do what I do and turn your kit guitar into a really high-end boutique style instrument. These are the tools that you're gonna need to do additional routing for pickups or electronics. Also, if you want to do some custom engraving, or if you want to make some custom components like wooden pick guards or knobs or whatever. So these are the tools that I use for the instruments that I build. The first tool that I cannot recommend enough is a Dremel, or I always say Dremel is like a universal term, some sort of rotary tool. So my tool of choice is actually this Black & Decker rotary tool, and as you can see, it's got a remote line kit on it. It's not even a Dremel brand remote line kit, it's a generic brand. I'll put links in the description for this, but it's super useful. I just hang it right here, and then right here it's got an engraving bit on it. And so if I want to do some engraving, I can just hold it like a pencil and engrave, and it makes life so much easier than if you're having to wield around a whole Dremel like this. So, you know, you obviously can't, it's a little bit harder to do engraving like that. So this is an actual Dremel brand Dremel, and I actually don't recommend it. This is the same price as the Black & Decker one, but it's only one speed. The Black & Decker one is variable speed, which is great if you're working with softer wood, or just if you're getting a feel for it, you've never used it before. Using a slower speed will help you screw up what you're doing a lot less. And then as you get more comfortable, you can speed it up. This is one speed, and they're actually the same price. And I've actually had issues with this cord shorting out. So as you can see here, I actually have an accessory installed called a multi-purpose cutting kit. Now, this used to be my router. This is what I would do to route additional pickup cavities or electronic cavities, is you can adjust the depth, and then there's a multi-purpose cutting bit there, and you can kind of route out and then kind of pry out the wood with a screwdriver or something. And for that, it actually works really well. And if you're not going to be doing this often, like if you're just gonna be building one or two guitars that you're gonna do some custom routing in, this is the way to go, because this kit is much cheaper than buying a router and router bits. And the Dremel you're just going to use for so many other things besides routing. So I can't recommend a rotary tool, sorry, not a Dremel, a rotary tool enough. So I recommend this multi-purpose cutting kit. I don't recommend this Dremel. Actually, while I was routing with it, it was shorting out, and so it was stopping and then starting and stopping and starting, and that's just a recipe for disaster. So I much prefer the Black & Decker variable speed. It's the same price. I'll put links to both of them in the description. I will say that Dremel brand accessories are a lot better than generic brand accessories. So I did cheap out on the remote line kit. This one works great, but it does overheat if I use it for too long. I don't know if the Dremel kit is any better. It certainly got better reviews than this one, but this one was significantly cheaper, so that's why I got it. And it does work fine, and if it starts to overheat, then I just take a break. I can deal with that. What I can't deal with are cheap sanding belts for the sanding drum attachments. Now, I use the sanding drum attachments a ton, especially when I'm shaping pick guards, or if I routed out a pickup cavity and I put away my router and my router bits, then I don't want to get all that stuff out if I need to remove just a little teeny tiny bit more. So that's where a sanding drum is really helpful. You can just get in there, especially with the remote line kit. You can just get in there really quick, remove a little bit of material, and you're good to go. But these sanding belts, I've tried generic sanding belts, and they just tear and fly off at ridiculously high velocity rates. They just are kind of a pain. The sand falls off of them really quick. So I do recommend the Dremel brand sanding bits. They last quite a bit longer. You'll actually wear off the abrasive sandpaper before the belt breaks, which is good because you don't want belts flying all over in the air. I'm telling you that from experience. One thing that I should mention, since we're talking about power tools in this section, whenever you're using a Dremel or another power tool, you want to make sure you have the right protective gear. So these are the gloves that I use, and these are like the holy grail of work gloves. These are Mechanics Impact work gloves, and they are expensive, but I do a lot of do-it-yourself projects, and I've gone through tons of different, look at that, I feel like I'm Iron Man when I'm wearing these things. Anyway, I do lots of DIY projects, not just guitar stuff, but they do fit like a glove, which is ridiculous to say, but those of you guys who wear work gloves, you know that work gloves don't necessarily fit like a glove. They fit like junk. And so these are great because you can actually still use your fingers when you're wearing them. Super good protection. They're really well sewn. They're really tough leather. You're not going to wear through really fast, but they are expensive. They're like $30. These are Harbor Freight brand. And these are what I used for a long time, but I just went through so many pairs. And as you can see, I've worn some holes through the thumbs and stuff just while sanding with sandpaper or whatever. It eventually just wears out because it's made out of cheaper leather. But again, I mean, these are like $4 or $5 at Harbor Freight. I feel like I have to say that disclosure stuff every time. I'm not affiliated with Mechanics, but they do make the best gloves. So Mechanics, if you're watching this, send me some gloves. It'd be great. Thanks. Something else that should be said for a good set of work gloves, since you're interested in guitar kit building, you're probably a guitar player or some kind of musician, so you really can't put a price on your fingers. I think about that every time I go to operate a power tool and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do it really quick. I don't need to put on my gloves. I always think, is it worth giving up music for the rest of my life? And the answer every time is no, okay? Even if I'm just gonna do a real quick thing with a Dremel or a Jigsaw or something, I always take the time to put on work gloves because my fingers are priceless. I wanna keep playing music until I die. So can't put a price on that. That's why I've invested in really good work gloves. You also want safety glasses, especially if you're using the cheapo sanding belts that fly off at ridiculously high velocities, or just dremeling or routing in general. Chunks of wood can go flying in your face, so you really want protective eyeglasses. And then as well as a mask. Just when you're working with really fine sand dust, what's it? No, not sand dust. Wood dust. What's it called when you sand something and dust comes off and it's like wood dust? This is retarded. Sawdust. Duh. Okay, sorry, I'm retarded. My brain went out the window into the storm for a minute. You don't want to breathe that stuff. So a good mask for sawdust keeps that crap out of your lungs. If this is your first time owning power tools, you need that safety equipment. You can't put a price on your eyes or your lungs or your hands. So even if you buy just the cheapest stuff, it's gonna be better than nothing. So definitely invest in that stuff. Moving on to some more, sorry, again, this video is epically long. I'm sorry. I'm gonna script out my next video. I'm sorry. Oh, so we talked about routing a little bit. And again, if you are going to just be doing 1 or 2 guitar kits with some additional routing in them, you probably don't need to invest in this. You can get by with a Dremel with a multi-purpose cutting kit. But if you do want to, again, if this has turned into a very addictive hobby and you're gonna be doing a lot more of these, I highly recommend getting a router. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a good router. This router right here, my wife got me for Christmas. It's $30 at Harbor Freight. And it's just the cheapest trim router that you can get. It's super basic, but you can adjust the depth on it. You probably can with most routers, duh. But for routing out just little pickup cavities for your guitars and stuff, it actually works pretty awesome. And then I also just bought the cheap router bits that they have there at Harbor Freight. And again, I'm probably gonna get reamed by professionals that say that those are junk. I've had pretty good results with them. So check out this router if you're going to be doing this often. $30, and then I think it was like $8 for a set of 3 router bits. I don't use any templates or anything, which you can get really expensive when you talk about routing for pickup cavities, because everyone wants you to get a plunge router, and that's one that has like some sort of like jig on it, so you can like plunge it down in and then route around and then bring it back up when you're done. I don't feel like you need that. Also, people will tell you need to get these expensive jigs that they sell from StewMac or Guides or whatever you want to call them, that make you make perfectly clean pickup routes. All I do is I just slap a pickup down on there and I trace it, and then I just freehand route it out. And even with just this cheapo router and router bit, I've had excellent results. I've gotten really good clean routes. If you plan to do something crazy like me and install a Floyd Rose and a Strat, you're gonna need to route out a spot for it. So again, I use that same router to do this. This guitar is a video that will be coming soon. I'll show you how to install that Floyd Rose. Yeah, router is a good thing to have. Again, I probably could have done it with the Dremel. It just would have taken a little bit longer. But since I do this often, I invested $30 in a router. So yeah. And the last tool that I recommend is a simple jigsaw. I use this to cut out most of my pick guards, or if I'm making like some custom wood humbucker rings, or just, you know, other trim and detail stuff. I'm finding that I'm better with this than I am with the scroll saw. And I'll talk about the scroll saw in the next segment a little bit. But this is a lot cheaper than a scroll saw, and it works awesome. And again, even though I'm gonna put a link in the description for you, garage sales, estate sales, great places to find these for really cheap. I know that I bought this one, I think for $5 at an estate sale, and it's a Skill brand saw that would probably cost you $30, $40 in a hardware store. So now I'm gonna reposition my camera so you can see a different spot in my workshop, so I can show you some tools that you're not going to need for your guitar projects. Okay, here we are in the darker corner of my workshop with some tools that I do love and I use for other projects, and I do use them for guitar projects from time to time, but a lot of people get intimidated by the tools that they see in my workshop, and they think that they can't build these kits because I have all these really nice tools. But I just want to go through them real quick so you can see that you really don't need them. So the first thing you're not going to need is a chop saw. And a chop saw is really great if you're building a deck or a workshop like this, which I did build. You can saw through 2x4s and stuff really fast. Occasionally I use it when I'm lazy and I just want a really fast straight line in a piece of wood I'm cutting for, you know, a humbucker ring or something that I'm making. But you really don't need it. You can use the jigsaw and it'll work just fine. So you don't need one of those. Also, you've seen me using a drill press. You don't need a drill press, and I'm actually finding myself using a drill press less and less these days, just because it's easier to just grab a drill and just straight down. And I'm also finding that some of these holes that I'm drilling in guitars, they don't necessarily have to be exactly perfectly vertical. Obviously you want them as straight as you can, but you can get by without a drill press just by kind of eyeballing, making sure that you're completely plumb and straight on your drilling. The last thing right here is a scroll saw, and you guys have seen me. I used to use this a lot when I was making pick guards, but I'm just finding that I don't need this as much. I'm using my jigsaw actually a lot more for doing pick guards, and what I'll do is with the jigsaw, obviously you can't do as fine of turns if you've got some really steep angles or whatever, or curves that you're trying to saw through. A jigsaw can't do that, but what I do is I just do a rough cut with the Jigsaw, and then I go back with my Dremel and a sanding belt and I just detail it down to the perfect curve. And I found that I'm a lot faster, a lot more efficient, and actually get better results just using a Jigsaw and a Dremel as opposed to using a scroll saw. So I don't recommend you guys invest in a scroll saw because they can be kind of expensive, especially if you buy a table and stuff for it to sit on. You can get by with a Jigsaw and a Dremel. I highly recommend both of those before buying one of these. Also, I'm not going to pull them out for you to see, but you don't need a belt sander, you don't need a circular saw, you don't need a Sawzall or reciprocating saw. Again, all the stuff that I've shown you in the previous segments are all the things you need for guitar kit building. Those other tools are great to have if you're a do-it-yourselfer, but they don't really have a place in a guitar luthier's workshop. So don't worry about those. Just get the things that I recommended and you will be golden. I'm Dan. This is Guns and Guitars. Thanks for watching. Next time I'll write a script, I promise. Sorry for the long video.